The Design of Utopias. Sir Thomas More wrote a fable about 400 years ago to set forth the social state of man in a philosophic commonwealth, but so completely has the world missed the entire point that the very word utopia is even today a synonym for optimistic but impractical ideals of reform. Campanella, an Italian philosopher, wrote of the major tragedy in that the subject of statesmanship alone had been neglected as practically every other subject had been reduced to a science. Government officials, he insisted, should be elected after examination to determine knowledge and fitness. Bocciolini contributed further to utopian literature, and Andrea sought to Christianize it with the theme, "For lack of vision, the people perish." The men who through the centuries have envisioned utopia belong to ages yet unborn, when the principles of natural philosophy will be applied to the problems of government and social dilemmas will be examined for solutions which are now termed impractical. One of the best known and least read of the world's literary productions is Sir Thomas More's Utopia. It was composed by a man who had suffered greatly from the political corruption of his day, 1478 to 1535. Having held high office, More was well acquainted with those machinations. More should properly be regarded as a Platonist, too, for the entire framework for the Utopia is borrowed from Plato's Republic, and the book is permeated throughout with Platonic ideology concerning the ideal state, under a thinly veiled satire attacking the policies of King Henry VIII. Here, then, is another voice calling men to the correction of their political vices. Unfortunately, the immediate success of More's book was due to his attack on the king and the government in general, rather than any serious considerations of the remedies which he suggested. In the Utopia, More presents his philosophical and political conviction in the form of a fable which sets forth the social state of man in a philosophic commonwealth. So completely has the world missed the entire point that More attempted to emphasize that the very word utopia has become a synonym for optimistic but impractical ideals of reform. Sir Thomas More was centuries in advance of his day, which was reason enough why he could not be appreciated. Together with the master Plato, More belongs to ages yet unborn, to the time when men weary of study of the dilemmas which now they examine by what they think is practical, will turn to solutions which they now term impractical. An important utopian was Tommaso Campanella, 1568 to 1639. An Italian philosopher, also with strong Platonic leanings. Out of the wisdom of his years, Campanella composed the Civitas Solis, the City of the Sun. In this work, he departed from his usual interests, science, mathematics, and religion, to apply the principles of natural philosophy to the problems of government. He regarded it as a major tragedy that men had reduced to a science practically every branch of learning except statesmanship, which continued to be left to the vagaries of incompetent politicians skilled only in the arts of avarice. Unfortunately, Campanella was not able to free his mind entirely from the pattern of his contemporary world, so his ideals are confused and not entirely consistent. He viewed government as a kind of necessary evil to be endured until each man shall become self-governing in his own right. To the degree that the individual is incapable of the practice of the moral virtues, he must be subjected to the laws which protect him from himself and protect others from his unwise actions. The principal purpose of life, then, is to release oneself from the domination of government by the perfection of personal character. Campanella envisioned the perfect state as a kind of communistic commonwealth in which men shared all the properties of the state, receiving more or less according to the merit of each one's action. His theory that the state should control propagation is a little difficult in application, but his advice that all men should receive military training as part of their education would meet present favor. Government officials, he insisted, should be elected by an examination to determine knowledge and fitness, and promotion should be by merit alone and without political interference. This view is definitely Platonic and leads naturally to Plato's conception of the philosopher king as the proper ruler over his people. Campanella may have intended his City of the Sun to be a philosophic vision of a proper world government, or may have been setting forth no more than the basis for a new constitution for the city of Naples, which at that time was looking forward to the estate of a free city. It is also said of Campanella that he lacked the beauty and idealism of the greater Platonists, and while this is probably true, his book is witness to the ills of his own time and a reminder to us that most of the evils he pointed out remain uncorrected. In the year 1613, Trajano Boccellini, aged 77, was strangled to death in his bed by hired assassins. At least this is one account. We are informed by another historian that he died of colic. A third describes his demise as a result of being slugged with sandbags. Anyhow, he died, and it is believed that his end was due to a book which he published entitled Ragguagli di Parnaso, a witty exposition of the foibles of his time. The 77th section of this book is titled A General Reformation of the World. Like the other utopians, Boccellini made use of a fable to point out political evils and their corrections. Apollo, the god of light and truth, is dismayed by the increasing number of suicides occurring among men. So he appoints a committee composed of the wisest philosophers of all time to examine into the state of the human race. These men bring a detailed account and numerous recommendations to Apollo. Nearly every evil of modern government is included, ranging from protective tariffs to usury in private debt. The final conclusion reached by the committee is that the human problem is unsolvable except through a long process involving suffering and disaster. As an immediate remedy, the best that could be done was to regulate the price of cabbages, which seemed to be the only article not defended by an adequate force of public opinion or a large enough lobby in places of power. Boccellini's satire is important because it constituted the first published statement of the Society of the Rosicrucians. It points out that, first, evils must be recognized. Then, the public must be educated to assume its proper responsibility in the correction of these evils. And lastly, public opinion must force the reformation of the state and curb the ambitions of politicians. This was a solemn pronouncement in the opening years of the 17th century. It is little wonder that it cost Boccellini his life. Johann Valentin Andrea, an early 17th century German Lutheran theologian, was the next to cast his lot with the utopians. His status is difficult to define, but he is generally believed to be at least the editor of the great Rosicrucian manifestos and the author of The Chemical Marriage of Christian Rosenkreutz. We may therefore safely assume that he was connected with one of the great orders of the Quest. Andrea's contribution to the utopian literature is his Christianopolis, or the City of Christ. This work, which is almost unknown to English readers, is largely developed from the ideas of Plotinus. Christianopolis is Platonopolis, Christianized. Its author was a quiet scholar with a long white beard and a strict sense of Lutheran propriety. His Christianopolis is a monument of morality and good taste. But beneath his strict orthodoxy, Andrea was a man of broad vision. His city is governed by the wise and is enriched with all the arts and sciences. There is no poverty. The citizens are happy because each is performing his task, motivated by an understanding of the dignity of human life. To my mind, it is dignity of values that makes Christianopolis a great book. In order to live wisely, men must have a sense of participation in the present good and future good. There must be a reason for living. There must be a purpose understandable to all, vital enough and noble enough to be the object of a common consecration, Andrea tells us again and again in the quaint wording of his old book, "For lack of vision the people perish." It remained for the master of all fable, Sir Francis Bacon, to bind together the vision of the utopias with supreme artistry. It is a philosophical catastrophe that Bacon's New Atlantis was left unfinished, or was it left unfinished? Rumor has it that the book was actually completed, but was never published in full form because it told too much. The final sections of Bacon's fable are said to have revealed the entire pattern of the secret societies which had been working for thousands of years to achieve the ideal commonwealth in the political world. I have examined 2 old manuscripts relating to this subject and found them most provocative. But it might be less to the point to discuss that which Lord Bacon was compelled to conceal, when there is so much that is worthy of our consideration in the parts of the work actually published. 11. The objective of the secret society. One reference to a secret society in Bacon's New Atlantis is scarcely less than a proclamation of the Society of Unknown Philosophers, but has gone unnoticed for 300 years. This fable is of the land of Bensalem, meaning the Son of Peace, which with its merchandise, the Light of Truth, maintained a trade with Atlantis, which was declared to be the same as America. Everything indicates that it was Sir Francis Bacon's dream that the enlarging of the bounds of human empire should be instituted on our own continent, an area peculiarly set aside by nature for the perfection of philosophy and the sciences. The writings of Sir Francis Bacon are generally grouped under 3 headings: professional, literary, and philosophical. Each of these groups contains a variety of important works, but Lord Bacon's mind, taste, and conviction are best revealed through his philosophical writings. In this group are works that are strictly philosophical, others that verge toward the sciences, and still others which sum up convictions relating to all branches of knowledge. Possibly the most remarkable of Lord Bacon's ethical contributions is the fragment called The New Atlantis, which forms a kind of gloss upon his principal philosophical production, the Instauratio Magna. To Bacon, the greater part of learning was the application of knowledge to the necessities of the human state. It was only natural that he should envision the results should his inductive system be given universal application. The New Atlantis was first published in 1627 as a kind of appendix to the Silva Silvarum, a natural history in 10 centuries. On the title page is a curious design. It shows the figure of an ancient creature representing time, drawing a female figure from a dark cavern. The meaning is obvious. Through time, the hidden truth shall be revealed. This figure is one of the most famous of the seals or symbols of the Order of the Quest. Contained within it is the whole promise of the resurrection of man and the restitution of the divine theology. The New Atlantis was not published during the recorded lifetime of Lord Bacon. It was issued the year following his death by his lordship's chaplain, William Raleigh. This man was Bacon's close friend and familiar over a period of many years, and most of Bacon's papers were entrusted to Raleigh's care. In his admiration for Bacon's personal character and philosophical powers, he left the expressed wish to be buried at his master's feet, and his wish was fulfilled. Raleigh writes in his introduction to Bacon's The New Atlantis, "This fable my lord devised, to the end that he might exhibit therein a model or description of a college, instituted for the interpreting of nature, and the producing of great and marvelous works, for the benefit of men, under the name of Solomon's House, or the College of the 6 Days' Work." What does that mean, Raleigh? The College of the 6 Days' Work is, of course, a thinly veiled reference to the perfection of nature through art. The 6 days are the days of creation by which the natural world was brought into existence, according to the account given in Genesis. As God created the universe in 6 symbolic days, so man, by art, that is philosophy, must create the condition of his own perfection by means of 6 philosophical steps. The college is the secret school, the wise man's house, wherein are taught all arts and sciences, and not according to a materialistic interpretation, but according to a divine understanding of causes. Raleigh stated that it had been his lordship's intention to complete the fable of the New Atlantis, with the second part to contain the laws of the ideal state, or commonwealth of the wise, since it was Bacon's custom to prepare numerous drafts of his writings in the process of perfecting them. It is probable that the second part existed at least in outline, but Raleigh would not have felt it proper to publish the part which his lordship had not perfected in literary form. It is well known among the secret societies of Europe that the second part of the New Atlantis exists. It includes a description of a great room in Solomon's house, wherein are displayed the crests and the coats of arms of the governors of the philosophic empire. It may be for this reason that these writings were suppressed, for these crests and arms belonged to real persons who might have been subjected to persecution, as Sir Walter Raleigh was, if their association with the secret order had been openly announced. The fable of the New Atlantis begins with a ship sailing from Peru for China and Japan, being driven from its course by contrary winds. Those aboard, after many months, faced death by starvation and disease. They prayed to God for help, and their prayer was answered. The ship came at last to the fair harbor of a great city in an unknown land. Here the mariners were hospitably received, and after certain formalities were permitted to land, and the wonders of the city were then revealed to them. The title page of Bacon's masterpiece, Novum Organum, features a small sailing ship between two columns. These columns are the Pillars of Hercules, the Strait of Gibraltar, which marked the western boundary of the sea. The little ship is science, sailing forth from the limits and boundaries of the old world into the unknown sea of universal learning. Is not this the same ship that finally came to haven in the wise man's city? The New Atlantis describes the magnificence of the College of the 6 Days' Work. Here the wise dwelt together in a gentle commonwealth of learning. One of the wise men makes the following statement in a prayer. Lord God of heaven and earth, thou hast vouchsafed of thy grace to those of our order, to know thy works of creation, and the secrets of them, and to discern, as far as appertaineth to the generations of men, between divine miracles, works of nature, works of art, and impostures and illusions of all sorts. It is difficult to understand how this reference to a secret order has passed unnoticed for so long, for it is scarcely less than a proclamation of the Society of Unknown Philosophers. The name of the land in which stood the wise man's city was Bensalem. This means the son of peace. Bensalem maintained a trade with all parts of the world, but not for gold, silver, jewels, silks, spices, nor any other material commodity. Its merchandise was the light of truth. Among the nations traded with was Atlantis, which was declared to be the same as America. The College of Solomon's House had ambassadors, agents, and representatives among all the nations of the world, so that all discoveries in the arts and sciences might be known to it. In great libraries, all useful records were stored up for the service of future ages. The book closes with a long lecture delivered by one of the fathers of Solomon's House. This great dignitary summarized the work of the Brotherhood in the following magnificent statement, one which might well be inscribed over the doors of learning and in the hearts of all scholars, scientists, and philosophers. The end of our foundation is the knowledge of causes and secret motions of things, and the enlarging of the bounds of human empire to the effecting of all things possible. The father of the wise men then described the laboratories, observatories, mines, and hospitals, and the various engines and inventions by which the elements could be controlled and the secrets of nature discovered. There were gardens for the study of plants, and parks filled with birds and animals so that men could investigate their habits. Even reptiles, insects, and fishes were considered and their uses classified. Medicines of all kinds were distilled and compounded, and mechanical arts were perfected according to the laws of nature. There were houses where the senses of man were studied with the aid of perfumes, flavors, sounds, music, and extraordinary acoustical devices. And there were houses where only deceits were on record, so that the methods by which men can be deceived could be made known and studied. In the philosophical city, all men were employed according to their tastes and ability, and each contributed in his own way to the sum of useful knowledge. There were museums where rare and excellent inventions were preserved, and galleries containing the statues of great men who had contributed to the improvement of the human race. Among the statues was one to Christopher Columbus, another to the man who had invented bread. The narration ends abruptly with the word of the editor that the rest was not perfected. Missing is that part which was to describe the laws of a philosophical commonwealth. It is safe to assume that these laws, like the whole pattern of the story, were the same set forth by Plato for the government of the wise. Everything indicates that it was Bacon's dream that the College of the 6 Days should be erected in America, an area peculiarly set aside by nature for the perfection of philosophy and the sciences. Part of this dream has been realized. In this land are the greatest laboratories, observatories, and institutions of research that the world has ever known. We are exploring into the mysteries of the atoms and the electrons, and have brought the heavenly fire, electricity, to be the servant of our purposes. All that remains is to crown science with philosophy. As we perfect the inner part of learning, the philosophic empire will arise in human society.